These days, Thameslink is an essential part of the London rail system. But it doesn't just serve London. It's a truly vast network stretching down to Brighton and up to Peterborough and Cambridge. What makes it what it is today is a relatively short stretch of track, the line from Blackfriars to St Pancras, the Thameslink core. Until the Elizabeth line opened, the only mainline railway to run right through central London. The core opened in 1988, but it could have gone a little differently. Today I am once again looking at the London Rail Study of 1974, which is a document that I find endlessly fascinating, because I'm a cool and interesting person. It includes early and very different visions of the Jubilee and Elizabeth lines, among many other ideas. Thameslink is in there, under the somewhat less catchy title of BR Through Running Scheme. I hope whoever came up with Thameslink got a bonus. Now, compared to the Jubilee and Elizabeth lines, the BR Through Running Scheme was actually a relatively minor project. The Elizabeth line, or Crossrail as it was known back then, was estimated at £300 million in 1974 money. The BR Through Running... Okay, you know what, I'm just going to say Thameslink. The Thameslink plan was estimated to cost just £10 million. What made Thameslink so cheap, and therefore so attractive, was that most of the basic infrastructure needed for it was already in place. There had been a mainline rail route across London since 1866, when the London, Chatham and Dover Railway opened the Snow Hill Tunnel. That had been closed to passenger trains since the First World War, but it had been used for freight until relatively recently. The tracks had only been pulled up in 1971, 3 years before the publication of the report. Basically, Thameslink was just reopening an existing line when you got down to it. This version of Thameslink was, in essence, the same as the one we got. But there were a few key differences. Going north to south, there would have been the option for trains coming from Bedford to terminate at St Pancras Station. This was long before St Pancras was considered as the international terminus, and at that time it was a rather underused commuter station. Trains that didn't terminate there would have continued down the line to King's Cross. In our universe, Thameslink trains also called here until the station was closed in 2007. It was here. This building was later used as an exit from the tube station until 2020, and now it's disused and you have to walk for ages to actually exit King's Cross station from the Victoria line. The next station would have been Farringdon. Here, trains would have gone to Barbican and Moorgate. Again, this was something the actual Thameslink did until the Thameslink programme. Under the Thameslink programme, previously known as Thameslink 2000, so 90s, the platforms at Farringdon were lengthened, and this meant that Barbican and Moorgate had to be cut off. You can still very clearly see where the line used to run, though. In our universe, the next station is City Thameslink. But in this version of the scheme, the next station is Holborn Viaduct. In our world, Holborn Viaduct was another underused terminus that existed until 1990, when Thameslink made it obsolete. City Thameslink is very close to the site of Holborn Viaduct. In fact, one of the entrances to City Thameslink was originally one of the entrances to Holborn Viaduct. I am so tired of saying Holborn Viaduct. Next is Blackfriars. Wait a second, why have they written Londinium there? Was this a map for Romans? Talk about pretentious. Kya. Sorry, where was I before I was so rudely interrupted? By myself. Oh yes, Blackfriars. These days, Blackfriars is a unique station that spans the Thames, with entrances on the north and south bank. Until the Thameslink programme, though, it was only on the north bank. The reason I mention this is because the next station is entirely new. Well, sort of. The map indicates that there would have been a station where Thameslink crosses beneath the line that runs between London Bridge and Charing Cross. For a very brief period, between 1864 and 1869, there was a station on Blackfriars Bridge Road operated by the South Eastern Railway. This was replaced with the station we now call Waterloo East. Before that, though, a proposal was put forward to rebuild that station to allow the South Eastern Railway and the London, Chatham and Dover Railway's passengers to interchange here. So the Thameslink station wasn't a totally new idea, even if it had been sat on for about 105 years. Still, the thought occurs that if this station had been built, we probably wouldn't have got the version of Blackfriars Station that spans the river, because it would have been ridiculously close to this new station. Next is Elephant and Castle. Never forget the elephant. I think it's reasonable to assume that this would have been basically identical to the station we got. But then we have another new station. This one would have been where the line crosses Camberwell New Road. And that's interesting because, once again, we are near the site of another abandoned station. This time, Camberwell Station on the London, Chatham and Dover Railway. This station closed to passengers until 1916, but its goods sidings were still in use until 1964. The station building, with its top level lopped off, is still easy enough to spot. And in recent years, there's been a number of calls to reopen it. I do find it curious that they seem to have wanted to build a completely new station rather than just reopen the old one. Elsewhere in the report, they say that many stations are in need of modernisation and improvements to accessibility, so perhaps they just figured it was easier to start from scratch. The report identifies a number of problems with the Thameslink scheme. The first was that the lines north of St Pancras needed electrifying at the time. The electrification of those lines had been long identified as desirable, but somehow BR just didn't get around to doing it. They would eventually receive this in the early 80s. The other problem they identified was one that hasn't been fully resolved yet, even now. That is, the problem of integrating the complex network of commuter lines south of the river with the busy commuter lines north of the river. In theory, this shouldn't be too difficult. The problem comes when there's a delay somewhere on the route. To give an example, if there are delays on the line near Bedford, that holds up trains on the Thameslink core, and that line is a bottleneck. Those delays are then transferred on to the southern region lines. So a vast area is potentially thrown into turmoil. As I say, this is something that still hasn't been fully figured out, and City Thameslink has the reputation of being the worst station in the country for delays. The report concludes that the scheme was recommended for consideration, but that it was only a priority of the second order. Still, get built it did. Most of the schemes in the report underwent major modifications before construction, if they got built at all. Not so for BR through running. Sure, there are a few differences, but in essence it really didn't change much. In fact, it's probably changed more between 1988 and the present day than between planning and opening. Well, I do hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. I would like as ever to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon and here on YouTube for your generous support. You are the reopening to my abandoned station. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio.